Hello, I thought that I would do a series of videos on why I feel the Nakshatras are so very vital, especially in terms of this first video that I'm going to do at this particular moment in time. One thing I want to say about the Nakshatras before we get into it is I have found from my own personal experience that it's a part of Vedic astrology that is least tapped into in terms of all the components of Vedic astrology. I find that a lot of people are using it in terms of muhurta, in other words, to pick a specific date for a certain thing. But in terms of interpretive astrology, then it's not really used as much as I would like to see it used out there. And in this particular video, I want to touch on one particular concept of why I feel at this particular moment in time, the Nakshatras are so very, very important. And this boils down to a particular controversy that's going around the Vedic astrology community for the last couple of years. And it relates to two different schools of thought in terms of the Zodiac. Most people who do Vedic astrology, they work with a sidereal Zodiac. For those of you who aren't familiar with what that is, I'm going to touch on that here in a moment. But most Vedic astrologers use a sidereal Zodiac. And then there is an emerging school of thought that's using a tropical Zodiac, but with sidereal Nakshatras. Now, there's bickering on both sides of that equation as to which Zodiac is actually the appropriate Zodiac to use, or which Zodiac was intended to be used. But really what I'm finding is at a time when it would be so much more helpful if astrologers could just find reasons to find common ground and explore specific techniques in order to see how strong and solid and sound those particular techniques are, we're finding ourselves instead bickering over which one is the right Zodiac. So Nakshatras, I believe, and I want to kind of touch on in this particular video, Nakshatras, I believe, are the factor that can solve that particular debate. And I'd like to talk about why. But first, let's touch, for those people who aren't familiar, on the difference between a sidereal Zodiac and a tropical Zodiac. In Vedic thought, the Zodiac is also referred to as the wheel of the sun. So even people who are using a sidereal Zodiac are using the sidereal Zodiac with the concept that it is 12 30-degree portions of the ecliptic, but it is being used and marked in relation to what the concept is, I should say, behind it, is related to the constellations such as Aries, Taurus, Gemini, etc. Obviously, we know each of those constellations is not 30 degrees, so some approximation does have to happen in relation to that. And obviously, those constellations don't follow the ecliptic or the path of the sun as the sun journeys from north to south and back again. In other words, you may not see a particular planet lined up exactly against a constellation when a person is working with the sidereal system. So it's working with a system that's saying a planet would be in the section of the sky where the constellation of Aries is, or where the constellation of Taurus is, or where the constellation of Gemini is, right? And so on and so forth. Then we have the tropical system, which is founded upon the concepts of the Tropic of Capricorn and the Tropic of Cancer, and that's why it's called the tropical Zodiac. Tropic of Capricorn is where the sun rises at the winter solstice, and the Tropic of Cancer is where the sun rises at the summer solstice. So Tropic of Capricorn is where the sun rises at the winter solstice. Tropic of Cancer is where the sun rises at the summer solstice. And so the ecliptic, or the apparent path of the sun, is the journey of the sun from winter solstice to summer solstice and back again, right? It's a north-south journey. And so tropical astrology marks the cardinal points of the zodiac at the seasonal changes. Aries begins spring equinox. That's the first movable sign in Vedic astrology. Cancer marks the summer solstice. That's the second movable or cardinal sign in Vedic astrology. Then you have Libra marking the autumnal equinox, which is another movable sign. And then you also have Capricorn, which marks the winter solstice, right? So the tropical system marks the sun's ingress into a sign against the seasonal changes of the zodiac. Whereas with sidereal, there is a particular factor called the ayanamsha, which determines the difference between the tropical system and the sidereal system of astrology. At present, it's roughly around, and I'm giving an approximation, roughly around 24 degrees in terms of the sidereal zodiac. So if you have a planet placed in early Aries, it would be in Pisces, according to the sidereal zodiac, right? So basically, there's a lot of argument and discussion between these two main systems of thought. The common system of thought, which is use a sidereal zodiac with sidereal nakshatras, and an emerging school of thought, which is we believe, the people who use the tropical system, we believe that a tropical zodiac was intended to be used with sidereal nakshatras. And so there's a lot of argument and disagreement, and it's really creating a lot of confusion for people who are clients of astrologers and for people who are students of astrology, who are just learning astrology. But one thing that is common between both of those systems and is very vital is both of those systems are using sidereal nakshatras. Now, there are some people out there who are using tropical nakshatras, a very small group of people. But in terms of the two main systems of thought that are using sidereal nakshatras, we're both using the same, nakshatras. There can be different calculations for where those are placed, but there's going to be more overlap. Now, you take that particular factor and you look at something which most people who are just learning Vedic astrology from the West refer to them as the planetary periods. In Vedic astrology terminology, it's called the Vimshottari Dasa period. And the Vimshottari Dasa period is a nakshatra-based dasha. So in other words, the way it's determined, this particular system of thought of periods of a person's life, it's determined by the particular nakshatra that a moon is in at the time of someone's birth. For instance, if the moon was in Mula nakshatra, then this person starts this particular lifetime in a Ketu planetary period, or also known as Ketu Mahadasha, right? So Vimshottari Dasha period is a nakshatra-based dasha. Now, almost every single Vedic astrologer uses the Vimshottari Dasha period. So every Vedic astrologer, in essence, even if they're not focusing on the interpretations of planets in particular nakshatras, they're using a system that is related to the nakshatras. And if both systems are using sidereal nakshatras, then we're both, in essence, using the same system, with some differences in how the information is going to be pulled out of the chart, as per the Rashis, also known as the signs. How can we understand the signs? Well, the signs are particular fields that condition a planet or the ascendant to channel energy into a specific area of a person's life. Basically, what the signs or Rashis do is they create a focal point for the planet and fine-tune the energy of that planet so that it can be focused into a house or a house cusp and impact a particular area of a person's life. Now, that is on some levels, in terms of interpretation, going to create some differences. But the very fact that we are all using, pretty much, sidereal nakshatras is one of the reasons behind the confusing question that we get asked over and over again, which is, how can one astrologer use a sidereal zodiac, another astrologer use a tropical zodiac, and yet still give the same prediction? It's the nakshatras. The nakshatras, that's one of the reasons. Also, another one of the reasons is overlap. And there's many other reasons which us astrologers haven't discovered yet, because that's the particular question that us astrologers get asked, and we have the hardest time answering, right? How can one astrologer use one system, another astrologer use another system, and still give the same answer? Well, that baffles us. You know, we scurry looking for the reason that that's happening. And what is astrology in general? I digress a bit, but it's important. Astrology is a method of measuring time and space so that we can understand the universe. It's a way of understanding the universe and trying to measure something which on one level is unfathomable. The universe, God, whatever it is you want to call it, it's unfathomable. Now, Vedic astrology does a pretty good does a pretty good job, I should say, of measuring that and understanding a person's fate, understanding a person's destiny. It's pretty powerful, but it only makes sense with a system that is trying to understand something that's so vast that it's going to be hard to define how both of those systems can pull something out. But there is one answer, and that is the nakshatras. We're both using the same nakshatras. Both systems, both schools of thought are using the same nakshatras. Both schools of thought are mainly using, some people are doing Jaimini astrology, which is Rashi dashas or sign dashas, but in the use of pure Vimshottari Dasa, you're using a nakshatra dasha. So you're using the nakshatras. The nakshatras are the vital point that us astrologers who are bickering over which particular zodiac to use, they're the one point where we can find some common ground. And if we begin to investigate the nakshatras and try to understand them a little more deeply, we'll find some pretty phenomenal things out. And I'm going to stop there for this particular video, mainly because I could go on for an hour, and I know that some people like to have these nice short videos so they can get some points and understand it. But in the next video, some of the things that I want to really focus on in relation to furthering this particular discussion. We've already spoken today about, you know, how we're both using really at the very base of the situation the same nakshatras. I mean, same system, right? We're both using a sidereal system because we're using sidereal nakshatras. We may be interpreting it through different, you know, rashis and things like that, but we're still at the foundation using sidereal nakshatras. I want to get into some of the reasoning or understanding behind that, looking at some mystical numerology in one of the future videos, right? Also, I want to get into the differences on some levels between the zodiac and the nakshatras, both on the technical level, in addition to the symbolic level, and try to understand those particular things and really get to the foundation of understanding what the nakshatras are all about, why they're such an important force in our life. What the nakshatras do, just touching on it briefly before we do the second video, they grow the consciousness of a particular planet in a particular way. So basically the nakshatras are known as the wives of the moon. In Vedic philosophy, the wife of a particular deity carries the Shakti, or the power, or the energy of that particular deity. The moon is about our consciousness, manas, sensory mind, right? It's about our consciousness. It's about growing our consciousness, how we're relating to the soul, which is the sun, how we're reflecting the light of the sun or not reflecting the light of the sun, dependent upon the moon, and how we're able to connect to that, to our soul, or not connect to our soul, dependent upon the strength of the moon. Well, the nakshatras, even though it's important to understand all the planets in the nakshatras and the ascendant in the nakshatras, and really go into nakshatras very deeply, the nakshatras really relate to our experience of consciousness, our subjective experience of consciousness, how we're relating to things. In terms of us astrologers helping people, they're very vital. So we're going to get into furthering this particular concept in the next video that I did. But I just really wanted to touch on this particular factor because I've been wanting to do this video for a long time. Because myself personally, I'm getting a bit fed up with the debate of this system is wrong, this system is right. Well, can't we all find common ground? Can't we all find a reason to agree upon something? Yes, debate can be healthy because our knowledge grows and furthers, but if we're arguing, going, you're right and I'm wrong, well, I think we're really kind of missing the point. There is one particular area where both systems can be right. Okay, right is really a judgment. There's a particular area where both systems can be right. And in my humble opinion, and I'll be the first to say it's an opinion, but it's a well-researched opinion, the Nakshatras are the vital common ground between. Thanks for watching this video. Hope to talk to you soon.